Hello and welcome to Jamaica Magazine. I'm your host, Theodore Henry. It's the International Day for Preventing the Exploitation of the Environment in War and Armed Conflict. The observation seeks to make people aware of the consequences that war and conflict have on the environment. Come, we have another stimulating show just for you.
Are you non-partisan, able to read and write well, and ready to serve your country? The Electoral Office of Jamaica is recruiting persons like you to become Election Day workers. Apply at the nearest EOJ constituency office without delay. Bring a valid ID and TRN. Election Day workers will be trained and compensated. Together, we can ensure free and fair elections.
Good day, I'm Twyla Whelan, and this is your JS News for Monday, November 6, 2023. Falmouth General Hospital will be getting a new ambulance to boost its fleet and enhance this life-saving service. A grant contract has been signed between the hospital and the Embassy of Japan, which handed over a check for the procurement of the ambulance valued at $104.59 thousand US, or approximately 15 million Jamaican dollars. The funding is being provided under the Japanese government's grant assistance through Grassroots Human Security Project. Health and Wellness Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton says the ambulance will improve emergency response in Trelawney.
The need for mobility, for logistics to and from the hospital or to move from one hospital to the next is always a great one. So adding this ambulance to the fleet that they have there is a welcome improvement in the capacity that they need.
Japan's ambassador to Jamaica, Yasuhiro Atsumi, says saving lives is the essence of human dignity and a key element of his country's partnership with the island.
This project rightly fits into the concept of human dignity, which Japanese Prime Minister Kishida newly announced as the common language for the world at the UN conferences in New York last month. The concept of human dignity will become one of the key areas of Japanese ODA cooperation.
The grant assistance through Grassroots Human Security Program provides assistance to local governments, hospitals, schools, and non-profit organizations for development projects. 123 projects have received funding totaling $9.5 million since its introduction in Jamaica in 1995. The Ministry of Health and Wellness is making progress in its rollout of a chronic care model, CCM, which emphasizes a patient-centered approach to managing Jamaica's growing non-communicable diseases (NCDs) problem. The CCM is being rolled out on a pilot basis at the St. Jago Park, Greater Portmore, Old Harbour, Maypen West, and St. Anne's Bay health centres. It is being implemented through the Ministry's Health Systems Strengthening Programme, which is financed by the Inter-American Development Bank and the European Union, together with funds from the Government of Jamaica. Healthcare providers at the targeted facilities and at the community level are being trained to work as part of multidisciplinary teams to coordinate care for patients registered for the treatment of hypertension and diabetes. The teams include nurses, doctors, specialists, community health workers, social workers, dietitians, health educators, exercise technicians, pharmacists, mental health workers, and dentists, among others. Highlighting the need for this intervention, the ministry points out that NCDs are responsible for more than 70% of deaths each year, as well as for people dying young. Data from the Jamaica Health and Lifestyle Survey 2016-17 reveals that 1 in 2 Jamaicans are overweight or obese, a risk factor for developing NCDs. 1 in 3 Jamaicans are estimated to be living with hypertension and 1 in 8 with diabetes. Minister of Justice Delroy Chuck is calling on Justices of the Peace, JPs, to lead the charge in fostering a more empathetic and gentle society in Jamaica. The minister was speaking at a sensitization session for JPs from Portland, St. Mary, St. Anne, and Trelawney last Friday. He encouraged the JPs to collaborate and devise strategies for making a positive impact and stamping out coarseness, brutishness, and violence in the country. The minister attributed the escalating hostility and brutality to a breakdown in interpersonal relationships and a lack of empathy within communities.
My great hope is that the parish associations could on a regular basis meet and find out how can we assist families to really behave properly towards one another. The level of domestic abuses within homes is an epidemic.
The sensitization session focused on JP's role in estate planning, signing passport documents, life certificates, and the ministry's subvention for JP parish associations. Minister Chuck also used the event to urge victims of abuse to seek counseling rather than using violence to solve the problem. The Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Mining has launched a stakeholder engagement drive to tackle concerns raised by farmers and fisherfolk across the island. It will also allow for farmers and fisherfolk to learn about various investment options in the sector, as well as initiatives to help enhance production. The initiative started last week in Kingston and St. Andrew. Portfolio Minister Floyd Green says it's among the events to commemorate Eat Jamaican Month in November.
We will be on the road going from parish to parish for the next 6 weeks. We believe that this is critical, in fact fundamental, to do a number of things. One, we believe now more than ever our farmers and fishers need to hear from us directly as we seek to increase the production of crops and livestock.
The minister adds that farmers and fisherfolk will be briefed on new opportunities, in addition to loans and private health and crop insurance policies, along with other strategies to boost export growth.
We do have new priority programs, and we believe it's very important that our farmers know where our ministry will be putting direct support over the next 3 years. And those priority crops include yams, breadfruit, sweet potato, ackee, mango, of course our small ruminant sector, goat and sheep, and aquaculture, and our ever in-demand spices sector.
And finally, the Child Protection and Family Services Agency CPFSA is working to eliminate stigma associated with adoption. The issue is being spotlighted in November, which is observed as Adoption Month. November 9 will be commemorated as World Adoption Day under the theme, Changing Mindsets and Promoting Healthy Relationships. Adoption coordinator at the CPFSA, Maxine Bagaloo, tells JIS News that the organization hopes to promote awareness among the general public about how beneficial and important adoption is to developing families and relationships. She asserts that there is a lot of ignorance and misperception regarding adoption in Jamaica, which is getting worse.
I don't know if maybe it is a cultural thing, but persons don't willingly talk about adoption. It's mostly a secret. And you find that people go away with the wrong ideas. Persons who are interested in adoption should think about if they really are interested in this commitment for a child for the long run. Can I afford this? Do I have the necessary support? Do I love children that I will be able to deal with all the challenges of rearing children will take?
Persons interested in adopting a child should first visit the CPFSA website at cpfsa.gov.jm or any of the agency's parish offices located throughout the island. And that's it for JIS News today. I'm Twyla Whelan. Thanks for watching.
Are you passionate about shaping the future of governance in Jamaica? Do you want to be part of a historic move to define the roles, responsibilities, and standards of conduct of our parliamentarians? The Joint Select Committee of Parliament, considering job descriptions, codes of conduct, and performance standards for parliamentarians, is having a series of town hall meetings to get your insights on the roles, conduct, and expectations of your elected representatives. Come out to the Glenmuir High School, Clarendon, on November 16, 2023 at 6 p.m. or join in virtually at Gordon House on November 30, 2023 at 6 p.m. You will have the opportunity to share your opinions, engage with members of the committee, and make your voice heard. Let's work together to build a stronger Jamaica.
It's now been a week since Jamaica was rocked by a 5.6 magnitude earthquake, and I'm sure you're wondering how certain critical government agencies have been responding. Well, we've been giving the updates, and it continues now with the Bureau of Standards and the Planning Institute of Jamaica.
I think generally speaking, across the world, persons kept on following what is the ill effect of this earthquake, and Jamaica stood strong. To the government of Jamaica and its PIOJ and the JSIF, Jamaica Social Investment Fund, the Bureau has been mandated to improve the building codes. So we have been revising the codes through a government fund of $100 million. And to the government of Jamaica also, we have been supporting earthquake units. So also about $100 million also in terms of facilities. We are getting funding to update the codes. So we have 11 codes being updated, and they're in 10 subject areas. The 11 codes handle areas such as, for new buildings, you have a building code for new buildings, large buildings. You have one for the existing buildings that are not necessarily up to code, and you have one for small buildings and residential buildings. And in Jamaica, we are unique for small buildings because we make small buildings with slab roofs, and we continue doing that. We have the codes are referenced in the Building Act, and the Ministry of Local Government is responsible for monitoring the implementation of the codes. The first training that was offered to the building codes was with UTEC and the International Council, the International ICC. The Bureau is also working with PIOJ, as I said before, JSIF, Jamaica Fire Brigade, Social Development Commission, and others to ensure that the codes are properly implemented and effective. So once the training is finished, it's a training that is focused on sustainability. So we're ensuring that once we get this knowledge from the government of Jamaica, we are training persons and it's going to be sustainable and repeatable. So everybody who's in that training will have to retrain somebody else. And therefore, through that, the Bureau of Standards ensuring that there is sustainability for all our country in the future. In addition, we have an agreement with the ICC, International Code Council, who makes the code, that any new updates will come to the Bureau and will transfer to these agencies. So in terms of effectiveness of code, we are ensuring that through the Building Act, the codes are being monitored.
PIOJ chairs the recovery planning committee of the NDRMC. We are doing some assessments from the core team of the damage and loss assessment core team, the DALA core team, using the post-disaster needs methodology to try to assess some of the loss, get some loss estimates. That's what we would typically report on in our ESSJ and some of our economic updates. It will take us a little while, a rapid assessment, maybe in another month and a half we'll have some assessments.
The singular most important task of the country's security forces is to protect citizens. But how well are they able to do that in the aftermath of an earthquake? Their response in such a scenario is quite crucial, and this feature will tell us more.
Jamaica is prone to earthquakes. The country's susceptibility to this natural disaster is because the island sits on a very active Caribbean plate margin. An earthquake is a sudden violent shaking of the ground as a result of movements within the Earth's crust or volcanic action. Although earthquakes can be devastating, the country's security forces are equipped to deal with any eventualities. Once an earthquake happens, both the Jamaica Constabulary Force and the Jamaica Defense Force will initiate procedures and set up their communication centers to disseminate information. An individual from each entity would be the liaison officer between the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, ODPEM, and the security forces. This will aid in efficiently deploying individuals to affected areas.
In the initial phase, the JCF would establish a command post at the Police Emergency Communication Center, gather information as to what transpired or what occurred, and to provide that information to ODPEM.
The security forces will also provide safety, especially where dislocation happens.
We would be required to ensure that the area or areas affected are properly cordoned and secured. We'd have to ensure that routes leading to and from our major hospitals are clear, or to provide information as to the clearest and safest routes to and from those hospitals, and ensure that they are maintained in a safe manner for the emergency units to respond.
A key asset of the JDF in the aftermath of an earthquake is the Disaster Assistant Response Team, DART. This team includes specialized engineers, medical practitioners, and logisticians, among others.
They are so equipped that they can be moved to anywhere in the island and be self-sufficient for a period of time in assisting ODPEM or the government of Jamaica in general with any disaster.
The JDF has many capabilities. Its engineers can help with heavy equipment and search and rescue, while its medical personnel can be projected to other places across the island and assist the Ministry of Health with providing care to injured persons. The JDF also has an air wing that comes in handy during disasters such as earthquakes.
There are strategic aircrafts that we are able to use to hoist goods, equipment, etc. as required from one place to another. In an earthquake, the likelihood of the roadways being blocked or congested exists, and as such the movement of cargo, etc. for assistance will be reduced.
And if there is a fire after an earthquake?
Our aircrafts are also equipped to move personnel as well as to assist the JFB, particularly in areas where we might have fires, fires in urban areas, etc. We are so equipped to use what we call a Bambi bucket system to douse such fires.
The additional assets of the Defense Force provide further assurances to other sections of the island as well.
Now, in the JDF, all soldiers are disaster risk officers. So for those that are in the western side of the island, if the disaster is concentrated in the western side of the island, they have the basic training that is required to then start the process of assisting the ministry elements, ODPM, etc. There until our specialized elements are moved to that area.
Unfortunately, when disasters happen, sometimes there are unscrupulous individuals who carry out acts to capitalize on the vulnerability of others. Both the JCF and the JDF say they are able and willing to prevent crimes of opportunity.
Ensure that those who would want to seize the opportunity to commit crimes, such as looting, don't get that opportunity.
Of course, last but not least, the JDF assists the JCF with internal security, policing, so to speak, within the country. In an earthquake situation, there might be need for key point protection, protecting of key installations to prevent theft, etc. We are ready and able to deploy to assist the JCF to ensure that these things does not happen.
Jamaica has had several major earthquakes and tremors. The earthquake unit, which records seismic activities on the island, recorded a 5.4 magnitude earthquake on January 13, 1993. It was the most significant earthquake recorded since 1957. As a result of this earthquake, Jamaica experienced damage to houses, buildings, and other infrastructure. So although there are no specific times for earthquakes to strike, citizens and other individuals can be assured that the security forces are ready to act if a seismic activity occurs.
Jamaica is prone to natural disasters such as hurricanes and earthquakes. Did you know in 1988, Hurricane Gilbert blew the roofs off 80% of the country's houses and wrecked the economy? Now in 2023, the government has learned from past experiences and will implement a National Natural Disaster Reserve Fund to assist the country financially in the event of a natural disaster. But how does it work? Hi, I'm Shaquille Rochester Shorter and welcome to Finance Matters. Today, I will be speaking with Mr. Taron Francis, Chief Fiscal Economist in the Economic Management Division at the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service about the National Natural Disaster Reserve Fund. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow the Ministry of Finance on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and now TikTok to see all the episodes and highlights. Mr. Francis, thank you for coming on our program.
Thank you for having me, Shaquille.
What is the National Natural Disaster Reserve Fund?
Okay, so the National Natural Disaster Reserve Fund is actually an account to be established that will house resources to deal with losses associated with natural disasters.
Okay.
That will enable the government to respond quickly and effectively in the aftermath of a natural disaster.
So, Mr. Francis, when will this fund become accessible?
Okay, so the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service, we're aiming to have the relevant amendment to the Financial Administration and Audit Act submitted to Parliament by the end of December 2023. At that time as well, we are aiming to have the financial regulations that will govern the transaction relating to the fund finalized and approved. So we expect that the fund should become operationalized sometime after the end of December 2023.
That's good news. So, Mr. Francis, in the event of an emergency, a devastating disaster, how quickly will we be able to access this fund?
All right, so we know that it is important to be able to mobilize funds as quickly as possible after you have had a natural disaster event that would have resulted in significant losses.
Yes.
And so the fund is expected to, the monies from the fund are expected to be disbursed within a very short period of time. Now, the reserve fund, one of the proposals is that the fund should be accessed only if the natural disaster would have impacted the country with damages exceeding 1.5% of GDP. And so what it will require is the Fiscal Commissioner to ascertain the impact of the disaster. And then once that has been concluded, the process to get the funds from the account will begin. And that process is expected to go pretty quickly. It will take the same process as would a normal warrant. So the Public Expenditure Division would issue a warrant. Auditor General would do their audit. The various ministries and departments would put in their request for the monies to be expended, and then Auditor General will have the money disbursed to the accounts for the spending to take place. So that process is expected to be short within say 10 to 15 days or less.
But some would say that's not really short, 10 to 15 days after a disaster?
The fact is that it will take a little while for the assessment of the impact.
Okay.
So that is going to be what is likely to consume most of the time prior to the disbursement of the fund. But no doubt, the funds are going to be disbursed in relatively short time.
So how prepared would you say we are with this fund now?
We are much better prepared than we would have been certainly a decade ago, 5 years ago. This fund is expected to be capitalized from the national budget up to $10 billion. But not only will it hold monies capitalized from the budget, the fund is proposed to also house those payments that would have been remitted from the other policies that we currently have for disaster risk financing. So when the Caribbean Catastrophe Risk Insurance Facility pays out with a triggering event, those funds are expected to be paid into the National Natural Disaster Reserve Fund. We're talking about the catastrophe bond. If a payment is made, then it will also go to that account. So we are much better prepared, I'd say, relative to where we would have been a few years ago.
So to be clear, the NNDRF is different from the catastrophe bond?
It is different. So the catastrophe bond is an instrument that would have been issued in the international capital market that allow us to draw down up to US $185 million. In the event of a triggering event, the monies are paid out and are utilized to finance response and reconstructive activities. Reconstruction activities. In terms of the National Natural Disaster Reserve Fund, as I said, first it will be capitalized by monies to be allocated from the budget, and then where payments are made based on the current instruments that we have available, those will also go into the Disaster Reserve Fund. So there are two separate instruments, except that one of them, when it pays out, it will be held in the account of the National Disaster Reserve Fund.
Now I get you, Mr. Francis. So before we go, quickly, tell us 3 things that we need to remember about the NNDRF.
So the first thing I want us to remember is that the National Natural Disaster Reserve Fund is just one of a number of instruments that we have in terms of disaster risk financing. So we have the Natural Disaster Fund, we have the catastrophe bond, we have the contingent credit facility with the IDB, we have risk policies with the insurance policies with the Caribbean Catastrophe Risk Insurance Facility. So it is just one of the instruments that we have in our suite of instruments for disaster risk financing. The second thing is that the National Natural Disaster Reserve Fund will be capitalized from the budget in addition to holding resources that are made available when a triggering event would have resulted in a payout from one of the other instruments that we have available. And the last thing I'd want to say is the National Natural Disaster Reserve Fund is certainly putting Jamaica in a better position to be able to respond quickly and effectively to natural disasters when they do occur.
I'm happy to hear that, Mr. Francis. On that note, thank you for being on our program today.
It was a pleasure to be here.
And thank you for joining us on this episode of Finance Matters. Remember to follow us on social media at MOF Jamaica and tune in next week as we continue to demystify the economic and fiscal policies and initiatives implemented by the government to empower Jamaicans as we chart a path to Jamaica's economic prosperity.
Thank you for being with us today on Jamaica Magazine. Join us again tomorrow for another interesting journey. Of course, you can visit our website, jis.gov.jm, for more news you can use. On behalf of the entire team, I'm Theodore Henry. Thanks for watching.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.